The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. Part 1. The Angel Gibreel. Chapter 1. To be born again, sang Gibreel Farishta, rumbling from the heavens. First you have to die, Hoji, Hoji, to land upon the bosomy earth. First one needs to fly, Ta-ta, Takathun. How to ever smile again, if first you won't cry? How to win the darling's love, mister, without a sigh? Baba, if you want to be born again. Just before dawn one winter's morning, New Year's Day or thereabouts, 2 real, full-grown, living men fell from a great height, 29,002 feet, towards the English Channel, without benefit of parachutes or wings, out of a clear sky. If I tell you, you must die, I tell you, and thusly, and so beneath a moon of alabaster, until a loud cry crossed the night. To the devil with your tunes! The words hanging crystalline in the iced white night. In the movies you only mime to playback singers, so spare me these infernal noises now. Gibreel, a tuneless soloist, had been cavorting in moonlight as he sang his impromptu ghazal, swimming in air, butterfly stroke, breaststroke, bunching himself into a ball, spread-eagling himself against the almost infinity of the almost dawn, adopting heraldic postures, rampant, couchant, pitting levity against gravity. Now he rolled happily towards the sardonic voice. Oe, Salad Baba, it's you, too good. What ho, old chumch? At which the other, a fastidious shadow, falling headfirst in a grey suit with all the jacket buttons done up, arms by his side, taking for granted the improbability of the bowler hat on his head, pulled a nickname hater's face. Hey, Spoono, Gibreel yelled, eliciting a second inverted wince. Proper London, by, here we come. Those bastards down there won't know what hit 'em. Meteor or lightning or vengeance of God. Out of thin air, baby. Dar-am. Wham, nah. What an entrance, yar. I swear, splat. Out of thin air, a big bang, followed by falling stars, a universal beginning, a miniature echo of the birth of time. The jumbo jet Boston, Flight AI 420, blew apart without any warning, high above the great, rotting, beautiful, snow-white, illuminated city, Mahogany Babylon Alphaville. But Gibreel had already named it. It mustn't interfere. Proper London, capital of Iliad. Winked, blinked, nodded in the night, while at Himalayan height a brief and premature sun burst into the powdery January air. A blip vanished from radar screens, and the thin air was full of bodies, descending from the Everest of the catastrophe to the milky paleness of the sea. Who am I? Who else is there? The aircraft cracked in half, a seed pod giving up its spores, an egg yielding its mystery. 2 actors, prancing Gibreel and Butney pursued Mr. Saladin Chamcha. Feel like tidbits of tobacco from a broken old cigar. Above, behind, below them in the void there hung reclining seats, stereophonic headsets, drink trolleys, motion discomfort receptacles, disembarkation cards, duty-free video games, braided caps, paper cups, blankets, oxygen masks. Also, for there had been more than a few migrants aboard, yes, quite a quantity of wives who had been grilled by reasonable, doing-their-job officials about the length of and distinguishing moles upon their husbands' genitalia, a sufficiency of children upon whose legitimacy the British government had cast its ever-reasonable doubts, mingling with the remnants of the plane, equally fragmented, equally absurd. There floated the debris of the soul, broken memories, sloughed-off selves, severed mother tongues, violated privacies, untranslatable jokes, extinguished futures, lost loves, the forgotten meaning of hollow, booming words, land belonging home. Knocked a little silly by the blast, Gibreel and Saladin plummeted like bundles dropped by some carelessly open-beaked stork, and because Chamcha was going down head first in the recommended position for babies entering the birth canal, he commenced to feel a slow irritation at the other's refusal to fall in plain fashion. Saladin nose-dived while Farishta embraced air, hugging it with his arms and legs, a flailing, overwrought actor without techniques of restraint. Below, cloud-covered, awaiting their entrance, the slow, congealed currents of the English sleeve, the appointed zone of their watery reincarnation. Oh, my shoes are Japanese, Gibreel sang, translating the old song into English in semi-conscious deference to the uprushing host nation. These trousers English, if you please. On my head, red Russian hat. My heart's Indian for all that. The clouds were bubbling up towards them, and perhaps it was on account that a great mystification of cumulus and cumulonimbus, the mighty rolling thunderheads standing like hammers in the dawn, or perhaps it was the singing, the one busy performing, the other booing the performance, or their blast delirium that spared them full foreknowledge of the imminent. But for whatever reason, the two men, Gibreel Saladin Farishta Chamcha, condemned to this endless but also ending angelic devilish fall, did not become aware of the moment at which the processes of their transmutation began. Mutation? Yes, sir, but not random. Up there in airspace, in that soft, imperceptible field which had been made possible by the century, and which, thereafter, made the century possible, becoming one of its defining locations, the place of movement and of war, the planet shrinker, the power vacuum, most insecure and transitionary of zones, illusory, discontinuous, metamorphic. Because when you throw everything up in the air, anything becomes possible. Way up there, at any rate, changes took place in delirious actors that would have gladdened the heart of old Mr. Lamarck. Under extreme environmental pressure, characteristics were acquired. What characteristics which? Slow down. You think creation happens in a rush? So then, neither does revelation. Take a look at the pair of them. Notice anything unusual? Just two brown men falling hard, nothing so new about that. You may think, climbed too high, got above themselves, flew too close to the sun. Is that it? That's not it. Listen. Mr. Saladin Chamcha, appalled by the noises emanating from Gibreel Farishta's mouth, fought back with verses of his own. What Farishta heard wafting across the improbable night sky was an old song, too, lyrics by Mr. James Thomson, 1700 to 1748. At heaven's command, Chamcha caroled through lips turned jingoistically red-white-blue by the cold, arose from out the azure main. Farishta, horrified, sang louder and louder of Japanese shoes, Russian hats, inviolately subcontinental hearts, but could not still Saladin's wild recital, and guardian angels sung the strain. Let's face it, it was impossible for them to have heard one another, much less conversed and also competed thus in song. Accelerating towards the planet, atmosphere roaring around them, well, how could they? But let's face this, too. They did. Down, down they hurtled, and the winter cold, frosting their eyelashes and threatening to freeze their hearts, was on the point of waking them from their delirious daydream. They were about to become aware of the miracle of the singing, the rain of limbs and babies of which they were a part, and the terror of the destiny rushing at them from below, when they hit, were drenched and instantly iced by this degree zero boiling of the clouds. They were in what appeared to be a long vertical tunnel. Chamcha, prim, rigid, and still upside down, saw Gibreel Farishta in his purple bush shirt come swimming towards him across the cloud-walled funnel, and would have shouted, "Keep away! Get away from me!" except that something prevented him, the beginning of a little fluttery, screamy thing in his intestines. So instead of uttering words of rejection, he opened his arms, and Farishta swam into them until they were embracing head to tail, and the force of their collision sent them tumbling end over end, performing their geminate cartwheels all the way down and along the hole that went to Wonderland. While pushing their way out of the white came a succession of cloud forms, ceaselessly metamorphing, gods into bulls, women into spiders, men into wolves, hybrid cloud creatures pressed in upon them, gigantic flowers with human breasts dangling from fleshy stalks, winged cats, centaurs, and Chamcha, in his semi-consciousness, was seized by the notion that he too had acquired the quality of cloudliness, becoming metamorphic, hybrid, as if he were growing into a person whose head nestled now between his legs and whose legs were enwrapped around his long patrician neck. This person had, however, no time for such high falutations, was indeed incapable of faluting at all. Having just seen emerging from the swirl of cloud the figure of a glamorous woman of a certain age, wearing a brocade saree in green and gold, with a diamond in her nose and a lacquer defending her high coiled hair against the pressure of the winds at these altitudes, as she sat equably upon a flying carpet, "Wreck-a merchant," Gibreel greeted her. "You couldn't find your way to heaven, or what?" Insensitive words to speak to a dead woman, but his concussed, plummeting condition may be offered in mitigation. Chamcha, clutching his legs, made an uncomprehending query. "What the hell?" You don't see her, Gibreel shouted. You don't see her goddamn Bokhara rug? No, Gibbo, her voice whispered in his ears. Don't expect him to confirm. I am strictly for your eyes only. Maybe you are going crazy. What do you think, you Namakul? You piece of pig excrement, my love? With death comes honesty, my beloved, so I can call you by your true names. Cloudy Rekka murmured sour nothings, but Gibreel cried again to Chamcha. Spoono, you see her or you don't? Saladin Chamcha saw nothing, heard nothing, said nothing. Gibreel faced her alone. You shouldn't have done it, he admonished her. No, sir, a sin, a such much thing. Oh, you can lecture me now, she laughed. You are the one with the high moral tone. That's a good one. It was you who left me. Her voice reminded his ear, seeming to nibble at the lobe. It was you, O moon of my delight, who hid behind a cloud, and in darkness, blinded, lost, for love. He became afraid. What do you want? No, don't tell me. Just go. When you were sick, I could not see you. In case of scandal, you knew I could not, that I stayed away for your sake. Afterwards, you punished. You used it as your excuse to leave your cloud to hide behind. That, and also her, the ice woman. Bastard. Now that I am dead, I have forgotten how to forgive. I curse you, my Gibreel. May your life be hell. Hell, because that's where you sent me, damn you. Where you came from. Devil. Where you're going, sucker. Enjoy the bloody dip. Rekka's curse. And after that, verses in a language he did not understand, all harshnesses and subliance, in which he thought he made out, but maybe not, the repeated name, Al-Lat. He clutched at Chamcha. They burst through the bottom of the clouds. Speed, the sensation of speed, returned whistling its fearful note. The roof of cloud fled upwards. The water floor zoomed closer. Their eyes opened. A scream, that same scream that had fluttered in his guts when Gibreel swam across the sky, burst from Chamcha's lips. A shaft of sunlight pierced his open mouth and set it free. But they had fallen through the transformations of the clouds, Chamcha and Farishta, and there was a fluidity, an indistinctness at the edges of them, and as the sunlight hit Chamcha, it released more than noise. Fly! Chamcha shrieked at Gibreel. Start flying now! And added, without knowing its source, the second command. And sing! How does newness come into the world? How is it born? Of what fusions, translations, conjoinings is it made? How does it survive, extreme and dangerous as it is? What compromises, what deals, what betrayals of its secret nature must it make to stave off the wrecking crew, the exterminating angel, the guillotine? Is birth always a fall? Do angels have wings? Can men fly? When Mr. Saladin Chamcha fell out of the clouds over the English Channel, he felt his heart being gripped by a force so implacable that he understood it was impossible for him to die. Afterwards, when his feet were once more firmly planted on the ground, he would begin to doubt this, to ascribe the implausibilities of his transit to the scrambling of his perceptions by the blast, and to attribute his survival, his and Gibreel's, to blind, dumb luck. But at the time, he had no doubt. What had taken over him was the will to live, unadulterated, irresistible, pure, and the first thing it did was to inform him that it wanted nothing to do with his pathetic personality, that half-reconstructed affair of mimicry and voices. It intended to bypass all that, and he found himself surrendering to it. Yes, go on, as if it were a bystander in his own mind, in his own body, because it began in the very center of his body and spread outwards, turning his blood to iron, changing his flesh to steel, except that it also felt like a fist that enveloped him from outside, holding him in a way that was both unbearably tight and intolerably gentle, until finally it had conquered him totally and could work his mouth, his fingers, whatever it chose. At once it was sure of its dominion. It spread outward from his body and grabbed Gibreel Farishta by the balls. Fly, it commanded Gibreel. Sing. Chamcha held on to Gibreel while the other began, slowly at first, and then with increasing rapidity and force, to flap his arms. Harder and harder he flapped, and as he flapped, a song burst out of him. And like the song of the spectre of Rekka Merchant, it was sung in a language he did not know, to a tune he had never heard. Gibreel never repudiated the miracle, unlike Chamcha, who tried to reason it out of existence. He never stopped saying that the ghazal had been celestial, that without the song the flapping would have been for nothing, and without the flapping it was a sure thing that they would have hit the waves like rocks, or what, and simply burst into pieces on making contact with the taut drum of the sea, whereas instead they began to slow down. The more emphatically Gibreel flapped and sang and flapped, the more pronounced the deceleration, until finally the two of them were floating down to the channel like scraps of paper in a breeze. They were the only survivors of the wreck, the only ones who fell from Boston and lived. They were found washed up on a beach. The more voluble of the two, the one in the purple shirt, swore in his wild ramblings that they had walked upon the water, that the waves had borne them gently into shore, but the other, to whose head a soggy bowler hat clung as if by magic, denied this. "God, we are lucky," he said. "How lucky can you get?" "I know the truth, obviously. I watched the whole thing. As to omnipresence and potence, I'm making no claims at present, but I can manage this much, I hope. Chamcha willed it, and Farishta did what was willed." Which was the miracle worker? Of what type, angelic satanic, was Farishta's song? Who am I? Let's put it this way. Who has the best tunes? These were the first words Gibreel Farishta said when he awoke on the snowbound English beach with the improbability of a starfish by his ear. "Born again, Spoono, you and me. Happy birthday, mister. Happy birthday to you." Whereupon Saladin Chamcha coughed, spluttered, opened his eyes, and, as befitted a newborn babe, burst into foolish tears.